Chief, I want to bring up the issue of secure rural schools again, because in response to your response to Senator from West Virginia, Senator Capito, I didn't really hear what the proposal was. Earlier in the hearing, we had some folks from Petersburg here. They were in my office yesterday. This is their biggest issue. 7% of the community's budget, it comes from secure rural schools funding. They're going to be seeing, last year they got $1.2 million under secure rural schools. This year, under the 25% proposal, they're going to be down to $41,000. Clearly, it's rattled a small community like that. So what funding source is the administration looking to use to pay for the secure rural schools extension? And then what I'd like to understand is how much timber would have to be cut and sold on our national forests to fund the administration's own secure rural schools program?
So our proposal is just part of the overall president's budget to provide that. So
there's no pay for that. It's just included as part of the budget. So what I'm trying to get at, we've got great interest, I think, from members of this committee to find a way to fund secure rural schools. Do you have any proposals for us in terms of how we can fund it? And if it's not from timber receipts, how are we going to do it? And what would those timber receipts be?
Well, all the receipts, the timber receipts are going to be part of the in our proposal, there's $275 million that's provided for the first year. And I just want to stress it's a framework, and we really want to work with the committees about how to put a reauthorization together on that. But the timber receipts will be part of that. But the challenge...
How much a part of that?
You see, under the 1908 Act, the $50 million that's spread across, that's about the level of funding that you see available. The other part, and so it takes. We're going to continue to provide the receipts as part of secure rural schools funding.
But we don't know how much those receipts are, or is it the $50 million?
Well, $50 million, what was available under the 25% of the receipts. There's about $125 million total that could be potentially made available, but there will have to be additional funding, just like there has been for like the last 15 years on the secure rural schools.
Okay, so there's 125 potentially that is available to fund secure rural schools, but we're only going to use 50 of it?
Well, under the 1908 Act, with 25%, that's what it equates to.
Let me ask about the recreation activities and how much they actually generate in terms of receipts. Which recreation activities are shared under the 25% payments? And if you don't know that, what I'm trying to understand is what receipts from activities from our national forests are coming in, and just kind of an understanding as to how much is coming in and where it's coming in from.
Well, Senator, we can provide you a breakdown of each activity that generates receipts and how much that we expect that to be. In FY16. The majority of it will come from timber harvest. But the point that...
Well, if you could get us a breakdown that kind of lays this out, I think that would be helpful. I've got a whole bunch of other questions, and I know that Senator Heinrich wanted to go another round here. The 2008 amended forest plan for the Tongass doesn't contain a renewable energy plan, and as you and I discussed as we were flying over the Tongass there, in order to deal with the high costs of energy in Southeast, hydro is the cheapest, most available and renewable resource. But It's frustrated, it's complicated because of the roadless rule down there. I believe pretty strongly that we need to have a renewable energy plan in the amendment to the Tongass plan that the Forest Service is now considering. I got a letter yesterday that is directed to Forrest Cole, your forest supervisor there in the Tongass, that outlines why this is an imperative. I want to make sure that that is available to you. This is something as important as it is to help with our struggling industry there in Southeast. Our communities can't survive if we don't have affordable energy, and the blessing in that part of the country is that the affordable energy is a renewable energy. But if our own policies are limiting or blocking our ability to either build that hydro facility or build transmission lines, we can't achieve that. So I'm going to make sure that you've got a copy of this letter, and would hope that you all are working aggressively to make sure that we've got a renewable energy plan within the amended forest plan. I've got a couple questions here about young growth, and then one on filming on public lands, and that'll give Senator Hoeven a minute to collect himself here. With this transition to young growth that the administration continues to speak about, you have stated that it's going to be necessary to export the young growth logs outside of the United States to countries, whether it's China, wherever, instead of processing them at the mills there in Alaska, that's going to have to be part of the transition to young growth timber. Tell me how exporting the young growth trees that would help our struggling sawmills, how does this actually make the transition to young growth work? How does it facilitate it? Because I'm looking at what the proposal is, and if we're trying to figure out how you transition so that you've got an industry that stays alive, but if you're sending all the product overseas, you're not going to be able to sustain these communities. So I don't see how it works. Again, I've been very skeptical during this hearing, and I think you can tell my frustration, but this is yet another example of where I'm not seeing the contribution to the local community here.
Well, Senator, I wish we didn't have to export any logs out of Southeast Alaska. It's my understanding to make, whether it's the old growth cells or second growth cells, economically viable, that we have to allow for some export to occur, and it'll be done based on the market, et cetera. But ideally, if we could actually keep all of that wood in Southeast Alaska and have the facilities.
This isn't your idea that this is a good thing to export. You appreciate that part of what we're trying to do here is figure out how we can keep these smaller operators going, and that you do that through available product there, not necessarily sending it out. Let me ask about the issue of retooling. Back in July of 2013, the Secretary of Agriculture issued this memorandum that outlined the goal to transition again from the old growth to the second growth. And in his memo, he says, we're going to pursue opportunities to facilitate investments in retooling, develop by December 31 of 2013, in collaboration with rural development and other stakeholders, a plan for providing financial assistance to retool timber processing equipment in Southeast Alaska to assist the industry. So that plan was due December 31 of 2013. The question to you is, where is the plan that the Secretary asked for, and what, if anything, can you point to within this budget on retooling financial assistance is there to help the small industry there in southeastern Alaska?
Well,
First, where's the plan? And second, where do we see the retooling efforts in the budget?
So it's my understanding with the plan that there's been different generations of that to address different issues working with rural development. I'm also aware of another issue that's come up that we weren't aware of. I think it's the Credit Reform Act. I do not understand all of it, but it's my understanding that we may need to come to you and ask for a reprogramming request to be able to provide the funding that we want to be able to use on that retooling. So I'm going to need to get back to you on this, but we may need your help on a reprogramming request to be able to work with rural development to be able to do this. To retool that mill is essential, and I think that the sooner we can be able to move forward that and work with the owners there to be able to do it, it will help us to be prepared to be able to not only start using some second growth, but to be prepared with the transition that will occur, sometime in the future.
Well, we need to talk about this, Chief, because again, this was a directive that's now a year and a half stale. There has been no plan, and if you're coming now saying we need to talk about reprogramming to how we're going to be doing some retooling, these are promises that were made, I think, in good faith, fairly. That just simply haven't been delivered on. So in the meantime, every time I go back home to Ketchikan or any of the communities in the region, they're saying, okay, we haven't been able to do anything to keep our operators alive, and on the other, the administration has promised us retooling. We don't see either. And so this is a real tough spot for us. I think you know that. So you're either going to have to help me figure out how we allow for an industry, even a small industry, or what you're going to do to keep the promise on the retooling, because it's just not there. So I'll look forward to visiting with you on this, but this is something, promises made, promises not kept. So we got to do better, Chief. Chief, if I may just ask one final question, and I've hinted at this throughout this morning's conversation, and this is relating to the filming on public lands. I've been at a couple different venues, one inside the state, one outside the state, and I thought that I would be asked questions about hunting and fishing and sportsmen's issues, and what it came back to was just this hue and cry over filming on public lands. And it kind of ties in with what we've heard from Senator Heinrich and Senator Cantwell here in terms of the access and just understanding what the rules are out there. But it would seem to me that the law on commercial filming that we passed in Congress back in 2000 is being grossly misconstrued and applied in a way that really limits or restricts or sometimes outright denies access to our public lands. And these aren't, I mean, the folks that I'm talking to, these are not big movie producers. These are, a couple people, 3 people, film crews. They've got cameras, they've got handheld video equipment. They're not disturbing the landscape. They're basically going in and taking these beautiful pictures that allow people who would otherwise not be able to access these amazing lands an opportunity to see it. And the frustration, I think, is that in some places they're being allowed access and others they are not, and so you have this frustration. Now, I understand that you're planning on issuing a new directive on commercial filming in wilderness areas. I don't know if it's this month or how soon it's coming up, but can you give me a heads up in terms of what this directive will actually allow, particularly as it relates to individuals and small film operations? And then if you could give me a sense, in this sportsman's bill that we're working to put together, we're looking at a proposal that would exempt a de minimis number of people who would be engaging in filming on our Forest Service lands. What you think about something like this? I'm really surprised at the level of controversy that this particular decision seems to have generated, and I understand why, but I need to understand a little bit more from your perspective where the Forest Service is going on this.
Well, we're going to move forward with taking the comments and all the meetings we've had across the country to put forward a proposal on how and when for commercial filming in wilderness. Because of the Wilderness Act that restricts or limits commercial activities, we need to have a system in place so it's consistent across the board for when it comes to commercial filming in wilderness. And really, what is commercial filming? It's in the past, it's the movies. The Hollywood movies definitely is a commercial film. But there's a lot of other things that are, today, people go out and take pictures. Never had to have a permit for that before. Don't have to have a permit for it now. So this was all about commercial filming in wilderness. But what did come out of the discussions we had across the country was a lot of questions around this, and that we've never charged for somebody to take a picture.
I hope we're not planning on it.
No, we're not.
Okay.
We never have, nor would we. This is about commercial filming, and really the permit is to address the requirements under the Wilderness Act to be able to put in place, these are the opportunities we have for commercial filming in wilderness. There's a lot of other places you can go film, but certain things, we have situations where people want to film in wilderness and they want to carry the story about wilderness, whether it's the wilderness ethic or the importance of wilderness. We feel that fits in fine. If it's a Hollywood production that could be filmed someplace else versus being in the wilderness, we'll probably say, hey, here's another landscape, go film over here.
What about this de minimis idea? So you've got a few guys. Let's just say for discussion, you've got 3 folks, and they're carrying all their gear on their back, and they're hiking in.
If it's for a commercial filming, and this is one of the things we're working on, we're actually working with the industry to come up with some clear definitions of just what commercial filming is. It's something we're going to have to address, to be able to find what is the right approach to be able to do that. Because you're right, today, from when we put these procedures in place in, was it 2000 when well, today, the equipment, most of the time, it's something like this.
It's this. On a stick, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And so it really changes the concern about impact on the ground, because you're not looking at large film crews in a lot of cases when somebody wants to do a commercial film, when they can use the equipment that's either on their hand or on their shoulder at the most. So that's the thing that we're trying to work through this. So this is just about wilderness and wilderness only.
Okay, so when do you anticipate that this directive is going to be out?
I'll get back to you on the date.
Soon or months?
It's going to be this year.
This year, okay. So again, I guess what I would hope the direction you're taking is that there is an appreciation that it's not necessarily big Hollywood crews, and that there is a distinction, and that when you go out with this small equipment that, Senator Cantwell and I could be a photography team out there, I would think that we would have an allowance within our public lands and a recognition that this is not the type of activity that we want to preclude. So I appreciate what you're saying about the differences between wilderness areas and non-wilderness areas, but again, there has to be some level of consistency out here. And what I'm hearing from folks is there is none right now. It's more than confusing, and it makes folks really angry. Yeah. So I think we got to get this right, and I'm thinking that if you've got small operators using this small equipment, and you're, I don't know, you mentioned drones, Senator Cantwell. There's some really great video footage of the Tongass that's taken by these little drones that you can get at Best Buy, and put your camera on it with your GoPro, and you get some pretty amazing shots. I'm sure hoping that we're not going to be
telling
people that we can't do that without a permit?
Well, Senator, we've had this interim directive out, I think, for 4 or 5 years, and we did have 2 or 3 situations where it was applied inconsistently, which makes the case for why we need to have very clear direction to all of our offices about how to approach this, and also what is commercial. And that's where we've had some very productive meetings with the industry where they've really helped provide some additional insight about how to do this in a way that it makes sense to them. And so that's where a lot of the comments that we've received has come directly from those, and a lot of public comments too. But because of that work and the meetings we've held across the country with the industry on this, that I feel we'll be able to move forward in a way with something that works, that it's clear, and people won't have to worry about when they need a permit or not. It'll be very clear for those that do need it around this concept of commercial, and wilderness. That's the thing we're moving forward to, and I think I'm optimistic based on the comments and the meetings that I've had with some of the folks that we'll be in a much better place than the interim directive we've been following in the past. This will be improved, it'll be easier, and it'll be better.
Well, I hope so, because I don't think that it does the Forest Service any good to see top-of-the-fold headlines in the Juneau Empire about the Forest Service banning the use of photographs or photographers in the Tongass. That's not good for you. It creates confusion, and there needs to just be...
It's never happened, never will.
Okay. All right. With that, I appreciate the time that you've given the committee this morning. I think you got a whole host of issues placed in front of you. I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about some of the things that we discussed here this morning. But I think you can hear the continuing concern and frustration from the people of the Tongass as we try to live in an area where we are 100% surrounded by our nation's largest national forest and not much room to move around. So thank you, and I thank my ranking member this morning.